An example of this is actually an artist by the name of Russ. Russ has some very unique views on how musicians should go about navigating their career. He is very, very strong about how artists should remain independent and own the rights to their music. He believes that this allows them to have creative control, but to also profit more off of their hard work. What does he do with that? He shares those beliefs in the form of his music. He literally talks about it in his music. But then also when he does interviews on podcasts or various news networks, he reinforces this and shares it heavily. So to determine your core truth, ask yourself these three questions. What do I believe that others do not? What is it about my personality that stands out? And think about this. We talked about it earlier, but what do people compliment you on that you can lean into, that you can double down on? The example I gave earlier was that people on Zoom calls, client calls and stuff like that, would mention that they love my energy and my personality. So what am I doing in my content, in building my brand? Leaning into that and really trying to highlight and bring my somewhat quirky and weird personality into the content. And number three, why would the audience care about this? How does this impact them? What value does it bring for them? If you answer these three questions, you'll have your core truth. And number three, the proof. This is how you reinforce your identity over and over and over. I believe that your brand is not what you say, it's what you do and prove over and over again. Strong brands don't just have one past success story. They have an ongoing pattern of credibility. Another Gary example is that he doesn't just talk about volume content and the importance of it. He's proved it for like 15 plus years. And he reinforces the credibility of this statement by talking about what he's done not only for his personal brand, but all the brands that VaynerMedia works with. For the Super Bowl campaigns, for example. The majority of their Super Bowl campaigns are determined off of high-volume social content that they do throughout the year to test learnings, see what the audience resonates with, and that's what they run with in the Super Bowl. And he shares those stories. So he is reinforcing the credibility over and over and over. So three questions to ask yourself are, how does every piece of content I make reinforce the associations I want people to make with me? What case studies or examples can I share that establish my credibility? And number three, if someone hears your name, what's the first thing that they think of? So here's a fun example using myself, Catalyst. I saw brands trying to scale via just views and impressions, but struggling to actually build trust with their audience. It wasn't the problem was the content. The problem was they were lacking clarity on the big picture strategy and what they wanted to have happen with their brand. The core truth is that I believe that a strong brand is built by the intentional pairing of relevant things done consistently, not just getting virality and getting a ton of views and impressions. And the proof is that I've built many different brands that scale businesses to millions and millions of dollars in revenue. And I show you how to do it completely for free via my content. So you can build your brand story in three very simple steps. It's not rocket science. It's not the complicated bullshit that a lot of my counterparts make it to be. So they can sell you some bullshit course. The catalyst. What do you see that others do not? The core truth. What do you believe that others might not believe? And the proof. How do you continually reinforce that identity every single day? Not only through what you're saying, but through your actions. If you nail these, your brand won't just have a story. Your brand will have identity. All right, now for something that a lot of people struggle with, which is picking your topic. Like, what are we going to talk about here? And this is a question that I get from many people. I've gotten this question hundreds, if not thousands of times over the last couple of years. And there's a lot of different opinions online about what or how you go about picking your topics. I have kind of a nuanced belief on this and view on it. And it's one that changes and evolves over time. I encourage you to start narrow. I personally believe that early trust is built off of being great at one specific thing and talking about that same specific thing. We all have that friend who is the best at everything. And we know that they're not good at any. By them talking all about how great they are at all of these different subjects and all these different skills, we pretty much assume that they're not good at any. Contrary to that is the friend who only talks about woodworking and how they love carving this beautiful chair or putting together this amazing desk for their parents or whatever. The person who is obsessed around one thing and speaks about that ad nauseum is the individual who we believe has credibility and is actually good at what they're talking about. They have expertise. A great example of this is that when Gary started making content online forever ago, I think he was super fucking early, I think 2006, 2007 on YouTube, he was the wine guy. He made content around wine. That's what he knew super well. Now, at the time, he also understood business and marketing, but he didn't talk about that. He built his base and credibility off of a subject matter that he was world class at. Over time, he began to expand that, right? He began to speak to the different business practices and marketing techniques that he used to build his dad's wine and liquor store. But in the beginning, all of his content for the first several years on YouTube was Wine Library TV, where he was tasting and giving reviews on various wines. And then what you started to see is he would start to pop up at South by Southwest and start talking more about marketing. And then one day, all of a sudden, this amazing speech gets dropped on YouTube, accompanied with a book called Russian, where he informed everyone his beliefs and utilizing this new crazy thing called social media. And so what you see there is Gary started very narrow. And as his experience and knowledge expanded, so did the subject matter that he covered in his content. Again, if you try to talk about everything in the beginning, you will dilute the power of what you're speaking to. So what you're going to notice is I'm not going to sit here talking about business tactics. I'm not going to talk about sales techniques. You're not going to hear me referencing customer success techniques and strategies, because that's not my wheelhouse. That's not my expertise. My expertise is on scaling brands and using organic content strategy to accomplish that. And so that's what you're going to hear me talk about. But what may happen is over the next couple of years, as I gain more experience in other areas, you might watch my brand and my subject matter and topics evolve. Now, the natural question that I imagine is
bro, I don't want your misses, bro. I send out to everyone. Yo, tired up, bro. I just push up for it's a daily routine I do every day.
I'm so far from ever expecting, like, I want to only talk about this for the rest of my life. One, you should
why didn't you just say that then? Instead of like talking about childish.
So if you haven't actually gotten to a point of excellence and world class, then I don't know that I would talk about this new subject matter. I don't think I would bring it into the table.
And I would have just spoke to like a man to man,
bro. Are you going to be providing the audience?
Yo, right, bro. Yo, my ex has been moved like that, bro. Oh, nah, bro.
And you get consistent engagement and positive feedback from the audience.
Yo, right.
Consider starting to expand. I would encourage you to take on adjacent topics, not something that is completely different. For example, I'm not going to be talking about brand strategy and organic content strategy, and then next week start talking about that would be completely off the wall and make no sense, right? So there would be too much of a jump for my audience to trust me on this new subject matter, because there's nothing about what I've been talking about right now that would give me credibility for this new subject matter. To use Gary as the same example, when he was talking about wine and building the brand and the company online, by him doing that and gaining success with the company, it gave him credibility to speak into marketing and to share those strategies, because he had demonstrated them in actual use. He put those strategies that he shared with us to practice to build his business, and that gave him credibility to jump into the next section or the next topic in his career. Another one is look at your audience and what they're asking for. If you start noticing that they're asking for additional information on something that you don't really cover that much, but you've maybe hinted at or it has been displayed in a minor way in your content, well, maybe that is time for you to start speaking to that subject matter. For example, if all of you watching this started asking me a ton about my Harley Davidson and all the little intricacies of all the upgrades that I've made and the performance and the handling and how I go on long road trips, I would gladly answer these questions. Now, when thinking about expanding, I would encourage you to do it strategically. So let's walk through what that looks like. A great example of a company that went about expanding their product line is Amazon. Amazon started by selling books, right? And now they sell, obviously, a lot more than just books. I mean, if we look at what I'm wearing right now, about 3/4 of everything I have on was purchased off of Amazon. But ultimately, even though Amazon has expanded to all these various different products, they haven't lost their core identity with books. So I would argue that acquiring Audible is actually a big step in re-engaging that audience. They now have what I would probably believe is the biggest audiobook platform out there. And so they return or reinforce, rather than return, they reinforce their roots by doing that. So in expanding, never lose sight of your core identity and where you stand. For another example, to keep running with the Gary Vee example, that man continues to this day to bring back Wine Library TV on occasions. He still brings wine into his content here and there. He pays ode and homage to the OG Gary Vee. Another great example, similar to Amazon and Gary, of returning to your roots is Crayola. As of February 2025, when we're filming this, Crayola announced that they're bringing back 8 discontinued colors that they had taken off the market. Some of them, as most recently as 2017, some of them go back to like 1990. One, bringing it back is a nostalgic play, and that's obviously going to resonate with a lot of audience, a lot of parents, honestly, that have kids now. Like I grew up with Crayola, and my generation is of the age where we have kids now. And so there's definitely a good play there. But I think what this shows is a company and a brand can evolve and add new product lines, add new things in, and change over time. But I do believe there is a lot of power in always holding to your core, to your root. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every year, every day, every month you have to do that. But it is good, and I think it means a lot to the day one and OG members or audience or customers of yours for you to return to that. Another example, actually, that I'll generalize, because a lot of creators do this, is if you're a creator or a musician, the content or music you were making day one in the early days, that's what a lot of your day one fans fell in love with. And like brands, a lot of musicians and artists, creators evolve. And they evolve what they create, right? We all know, I'm really big into hardcore music, as an example. And I can't tell you, actually, a prime example of this, I just thought of right now, is Knock Loose. In the hardcore space, Knock Loose started as a hardcore band. They had that, grungy, local basement sound. But Knock Loose has blown the fuck up. And as they continue to get bigger, they have haters that call them sellouts and all of this stuff. Well, the cool thing that Knock Loose does at their shows is they still play their original tracks. They still play the gospel, and that shit fucking slaps every single time. And it allows for us day one fans to have that nostalgic feeling and make sure that we still feel attached to not only what the band has evolved into, but where the band came from. So a takeaway here for those of you that have a more established brand is maybe consider bringing back a nostalgic play. Return to your roots a little bit. If you had a different content format style that you used to do, or the musician example, if you had an earlier raw sound, maybe consider releasing a project that taps into that nostalgic play. Nostalgia is a very big winner amongst people. A pro tip on this is to expand in layers, not leaps. So don't do anything massive. Every jump, every new topic you add should really feel natural to your audience. Again, like the example I gave earlier, it shouldn't feel like talks about brand experience because it should be, if I wanted to get pleasure, I should probably inch my way over to that point rather than having just simply talk about it. Now, based on the niche you're in and your desired association, that's what's going to inform the topics that you want to explore and expand. Now, a key reminder in this is where a lot of you are potentially going to get out. So this is how I'm saying this. Don't think of it as a rule. When you're picking these topics, these are guidelines you can follow. It's easier for you to create content. But don't make it an absolute rule. As much as I was saying that it'd be weird for me to make content around brand or organic content strategy and then legally jump to that, sure, that might be really abrupt and kind of like gnarly for the audience. But ultimately, our goal is to do this for a long time. And so if that is something that you do, okay, just jump into it. By no means are these rules to follow. These are guidelines to help us. It's easier for you, not something that you have to overthink. In fact, I'm going to double down on this real quick because I think a lot of people sit down with a brand strategist or whatever and they build out these content pillars. And then they always say, well, it doesn't fall within this pillar. You keep talking about it. But here's the thing. When Trevor and I sat down and identified what we were going to be talking about next, we didn't necessarily say Harley Davidson. But as you can probably tell if you're at this point in the video, I referenced Harley a lot. And I want to make a talk about Harleys as well. Is it one of my content pillars? No, it's not. But if I want to make a video about my Harley, I'm going to fucking do it because I enjoy it. And I think that what it does do is it rounds out my brand and makes me more interesting. I'm not just somebody who cares about high-end and organic content. I also love my motorcycle. I travel on it. I love the custom. This is what will make you interesting and will cause you to actually stand out competitors. So the key here is don't be rigid, stay flexible. So if you're trying to figure this out, here's 3 questions that might help you. First question is, what am I genuinely passionate about discussing? If you can't tell by now, I'm very passionate about brand strategy. It probably comes through in my tone. That's what you want to talk about. You want to talk about something that you're going to want to talk about. Because when you do that through and people will connect with you, you will probably feel like you are more convicted about what you are saying and believe you and actually take action on what you are saying rather than just sitting. Number 2 is what will resonate with my audience most now. So for me, for example, when I talk about brand strategy, something that is definitely a need in the audience that I have is organic content strategy. I'm going to talk far less over the next year about my paid media strategy because that's something that a lot of people that I have spoken to in the last 5 years need less help with. They have more experience. On the contrary, a lot of people look at organic content on social as like this like black box.